Hey, how's it going, everyone? A lot of you might remember my PAX show floor tour video from last year, but this year, I want to just talk about the show and my time there, instead of just doing this little 5 or 10 minute sped up walking tour thing, because I went to PAX Prime again, and once again, it was a really good time, and I have a lot on my mind about the show, so this might go really long because I'm just going to talk about my time in Seattle, what I did while I was there, what I played while I was at PAX. So if you want to skip around my impressions, there are going to be some time-stamped footnotes that jump from topic to topic in the description. So to start off, I got in early morning on Thursday, which was the day before the con actually started, so I could walk around Seattle and enjoy the sights, because Seattle is a beautiful city and I really admire it. And I fell into some tourist traps while I was there. I visited the Space Needle. I enjoyed the breathtaking view from the observation deck at the top. I went across the street to the EMP Museum and checked that out for a bit. Destroyed some folks in Nidhogg there because Nintendo was hosting this indie game thing in the museum. I checked out the Jimi Hendrix exhibit and I learned a lot about him. There was a horror exhibit there, a horror film exhibit, which was neat, and it was probably my favorite part because there was just a huge amount of variety and stuff there. They had the camcorder from the original Blair Witch Project. They had props from The Fly. There was a whole Eli Roth section. There was a giant 8-foot xenomorph encased in glass there. Loads of info on tons of horror stuff that I like. There were zombie suits from the Thriller music video. Just all sorts of fun stuff. They had a really big sci-fi exhibit too, with a lot of props from movies and stuff like that, but I didn't think so much of it was as insightful as the horror exhibit was, but there was still plenty of cool stuff. There's a big, 6-foot Dalek there. The only thing is, there was a lot of overlap with the horror exhibit because there was so much aliens representation. So later that night, after all that, I went to this really cool Mad Max themed bar crawl. It was called Mad PAX Blurry Road. It was 4 bars and 8 teams of 50 people. So 2 teams of 50 or 60 people were in a bar at a time, and they were all following different routes. So there was always 2 teams in a bar at a time. There were lots of costumes. People really got into the Road Warrior spirit. There's just lots of great makeshift costumes. Even people cosplaying as Furiosa and the Doof Warrior and stuff. Tons of people drunkenly shouting, "Witness me!" Oh, it was awesome. It was an awesome night. One of the teams had a Doof Warrior who had a ghetto blaster that was just blaring Islands in the Stream on repeat. So you see this giant ant trail of 50 people walking down the street in spiked football pads and face paint and shit, and behind them as they're crawling their way to the next bar is Islands in the Stream, just doing its thing. So at each bar we had challenges, right? And so at the first bar, you just have a beer plus whatever else you feel like drinking, and also shout outs to the person on each team whose responsibility it was to remind everyone to drink some water at each bar, because that person prevented so many hangovers. So we have our beer at the first bar, we drink, we walk, it's a good time. We go to the next one on our route, and the challenge is that we have to find a partner from the other team in the bar. So one person picks a regular drink, and the other person picks a shot, and you combine them into a car bomb, and you both order this Frankenstein drink, and you both have to down it. So if you want to troll the other person, you have to troll yourself too. So I found someone, and we came up with a shot of Soko and Lime, which was my idea, and the other person's was a glass of PBR. So it was Soko and Lime in PBR, and it was pretty good. Someone next to us did a shot of vodka in a glass of V8 juice, and they both hated each other after. It was awesome. I met Amir from Maker Studios. We both had a really long talk. It was a lot of fun. Met a ton of other people there. Had a super fun time with that whole bar crawl. Next up, we went to this bar called the Unicorn that had all these really tasty drinks that were PAX themed, and just the bar is called the Unicorn, so that kind of theme going. Toasted apple gumdrop and stuff. I drank a lot there. And I met up with this group of 3 or 4 people, and we got really plastered, and we had to tap out after like an hour at the Unicorn. So we all split an Uber to get back to our hotels. What a good ass time. Oh, also, if you can't tell by now, I have a bit of the PAX plague, so my voice sounds a little bit weird. That's why I'm a little bit sick from hanging around 70,000 people for 4 or 5 days. Oh yeah, before I get off of that, thanks to our awesome Imperator again, we drank a little bit of water at each bar, so I woke up feeling fresh as a daisy for day 1 of PAX, no hangover, nothing. First thing I did when I got to the con on Friday morning was hit up Sony's Morpheus booth, and they fucked up super hard. They were doing a setup where you had to download their app and then sign in to schedule an appointment to use the Morpheus, to do one of their Morpheus demos. But they still had the tape down on the show floor for people to line up, even though they had to keep telling people that there were no lines, that you had to do everything through the app. And the problem was that it's impossible to get a connection on the expo floor. Wi-Fi's out of the question, nobody got any data coverage in there, plus the app was broken, people couldn't sign into it, so they had to just take people from the line anyway. But I finally got to play The Kitchen, that demo that I was talking about back in the Oculus horror episode of Tiny Voices. If I had known that The Kitchen was even going to be here, because I was in contact with the Capcom reps and the Sony reps trying to figure out whether or not they were going to bring The Kitchen around. If I had known that it was going to be there, I would not have used that as an example in that Tiny Voices video, because I had to read a breakdown of what happens in it, so I didn't get to go into it blind. That said, even not going into it totally blind, it still got me. It's still the real deal. Here's what I didn't know. 1, it uses the gyro of the DualShock 4 in a really cool way. So in the game, your hands are bound together and your character is tied to this rickety wooden chair. So imagine how your hands are when you're holding a controller. It's kind of like they're tied together almost. You can't really do that much with your hands while still holding the controller, right? Well, you're not using the analog sticks. You're acting as if your hands are bound and you're moving your arms around, clutching the DualShock 4, trying to find something sharp in the game to cut the rope binding your wrists together. And it uses the PlayStation Eye camera to track your posture, so however you're sitting in the chair is reflected in your character's posture. And it's all from first person, so it's super immersive. And it's also taken into account the room behind you. It's fucking awesome. I did flinch when my character got stabbed in the leg, even though I saw it coming. When the lady comes up behind you and you see her fingers slither over your face and she yanks your character's head back, I almost fell out of the chair because it's that disorienting. It is the real deal, guys. I'm so ready for VR to take over. I'm so ready for that. I also played so much Street Fighter V because the lines were not long at all. I got in a lot of matches, notably most of them with Necropolis. The build was the absolute most recent one because it had Armika in it, who was just announced like the day before PAX. Unfortunately, Necropolis was the only non-beta character I played. I have no affinity for Ken or Vega, so I didn't really play them that much. I only warmed up to Armika late in the weekend because I found out that her new moveset is fucking amazing, and I found out she even has a Stone Cold Stunner! So I only found out about all that stuff that would have made me warm up to her like late in the weekend. So yeah, I played a bunch of Birdie though, which kind of in retrospect was a waste of time because I got home and played him a lot in the beta anyway. He might be my favorite character right now. Necropolis, though, I played more than anyone else while I was there. Necropolis is super interesting. His normals are all shit. His specials, though, they're like a Marvel Wolverine. MVC Wolverine, rather. His V-Trigger is one of the most unique in the roster in that you pop it and it never goes away for the rest of the round, but your meter generation is like cut in half. That and his V-skill is like Sea Viper's Seismo, and you control where it hits by either holding back, forward, or going neutral when you use it. It made me a lot more interested in Necropolis finally having hands-on with him. Like, his visual design has always been there, But now that I have a better idea of how he plays, he's just a really well-rounded character I like a lot. And again, Birdie's in the beta, so I won't spend too much time on him, except to say that I might, if things keep up the way they are now, I might main him when the game comes out, and I'm so shocked by that. Because there's a lot of what he does that kind of reminds me a little bit of Q. Not in any, exact ways, but there are just little similarities here and there that become way more pronounced as you play him. So moving on from Street Fighter, I got to talk to the Supergiant guys, and I thank them for helping out with the raffle prizes for Gami. They were really, really super nice. I went around in search of a game, and I found the Barkley 2 booth, which I was intending to hit up anyway. I found the Barkley 2 booth with its awesome shitty sign and the Cyberdwarf wig on the basketball. It was amazing. I met Liam from Tales of Games, and he showed me a bunch of stuff, including the in-game forums, and my favorite Barkley 1 character is back as an obnoxious forum poster, of course. I played a little bit of that. I can't wait for it to come out. There's a forum in that game, an in-game forum dedicated to, internet religion debates and shit. The sense of humor in that game is on point, just as on point as it was in Barkley 1. Liam was telling me that what they're trying to do is set everything to, a global cycle and have crazy big branching paths that make it so that you possibly might never see huge chunks of the content in the game. And that's always something that I've wanted out of decision-based games, where you can play through the game once and then go through it again and go, holy shit, I've never seen this before. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. I want to say that Liam told me that you should only see at most a quarter of the content in the game on your first playthrough, something like that, if you're playing in a way that optimizes seeing as much as possible. I really can't wait for Barkley 2. If you've never played the first one, check it out. It's called Barkley Shut Up and Jam Gaiden. Barkley 2 is going to be a blast. I really can't wait for that. Then I finally found the booth that I was off in search for in the first place. It was Ska Studios' booth, who they're making a game called Salt and Sanctuary, which I only heard about towards the end of, I think, East earlier this year. It is a 2D Dark Souls-like. It controls very, very similarly, and it has a very similar design ethos to a Souls game, except on a 2D plane with Ska Studios' just beautiful art style. If you've played Vampire Smiles or Charlie Murder, think of something like that. There were 3 different levels that you could branch off to. It seems to be based around a hub world. And one of those paths leads to this cool little boss called the Queen of Smiles. That's about all I played up to. I didn't want to spoil too much of it for myself. I just wanted to get some hands-on time with the controls. Oh man, it plays like a dream. Hopefully that comes out later this year, or maybe 2016. I think it's supposed to be early 2016, but I can't quite remember. At some point, I somehow wound up at the Square Enix side of things, because I think I wanted to get hands-on with the new Deus Ex, but it wasn't playable as far as I could tell. I did wind up playing Just Cause 3, because it had a 5-minute line or something that's just ridiculous. A 5-minute line to play a decent amount of Just Cause 3. And surprise, Just Cause 3 is really good. It's Just Cause 2 with an even better grappling hook. I liked it. I can't wait for that. I can't remember if this was Friday or Saturday, but at some point I cleared a lot of time to stand in line twice for Dark Souls 3, because of course I did. I would have played it more, but I was in that line a combined 4.5 hours. The first 3 hours for a hard 10-minute limit on playing, and then the next hour and a half I actually made it to the boss and killed it. And they were letting people who made it to the boss fight or got near the boss stay on past their hard time limit. The second time in line wasn't too bad, because I kind of accidentally scummed my way into the middle of a line by doing some Assassin's Creed type shit. I was passing by, and I struck up a conversation with a group that I happened to be passing next to, and I had no intention of doing this, but I was walking by the booth, and I started talking to some people there, this group of like 3 or 4, and that conversation went so long that I just wound up sidling up next to them, and I just joined in their little 3-person group and managed to accidentally butt in front of like half the line. Dark Souls 3 is really fucking good, guys. The art style feels very heavily Bloodborne influenced. The speed is faster than Demon Souls, but a little bit slower than Bloodborne. It's noticeably faster than either Dark Souls 1 or 2. The level design is decidedly Dark Souls 1. It's got that Miyazaki touch. The good backstabs from Dark Souls 1 are back. They have really good fuck you ambushes, one with a dragon that you've probably seen. They didn't have any magic or ranged in the demo that I played, so I'm still curious about that. Circle strafing is still a really good tactic, not quite as disgusting as usual. They've taken some steps in the enemy AI and design to counter that playstyle a little bit, but it still works really well. The enemy designs varied from decent to holy shit. The boss, the Dancer of the Frozen Valley was its name, had these really cool looking attack animations that all flowed into each other like dance moves. The first half of the fight's really easy, the second half was much tougher, but I still managed to beat it on the first shot. Go me. Granted, I had the benefit of seeing someone else in line playing before my turn, so I kind of had an idea of what to expect going into it. Got to the boss on my second time in line, so I had time to warm up as well. But yeah, Dark Souls 3 has the Miyazaki touch. It's gonna be great. My only gripe was with how they handled the lines. I got in line for Bloodborne like 6 times at PAX Prime last year because the lines were between, I don't know, 15 and 45 minutes each because they had more stations, and you could only go until you died, and most people died really, really quick. It wasn't like a specific time limit. And the line itself wasn't nearly as long because of where the booth was located on the floor. So I wish they handled the Dark Souls 3 booth better, but no big deal there. Still got to play it twice. It was still really fun. I finished the first day of PAX off going to the Penny Arcade Acquisitions Inc. panel. Again, really, really long lines. Theme of PAX itself. Showed up 2.5 hours early for it. We weren't allowed to line up until 6:30 officially. The show started at 8:30 p.m. So we spent the first half hour lined up on one side of the theater, quote unquote, waiting for the bus before getting in the actual official line. The show, if you haven't seen it, is a live D&D campaign with the Penny Arcade guys plus a few other people. Scott Kurtz, of course, mainstay of it. They were doing like this mock-up of the new Rage of Demons campaign. Just robots, robot beholders, madness. Really, really fun campaign. They always put on a good show. It's like half improv comedy show with the framework of D&D as window dressing almost. It was a really good time. There's some good badass moments as always. Acquisitions Inc. is always worth the wait. Plus it goes on for like 3 hours or so. So you don't waste all that time in line for like a couple of minutes or like a half-hour show or something. I got really awesome seats in one of the balconies that was like adjacent to the stage. Not one of these nosebleeds that are like at the back of the hall. So I managed to get some really good pictures too. So fast forward to Saturday, I got there real early in the morning. I was one of the first general admission groups let in, and there was still a shockingly crazy long wait to play Starfox because they only had 8 stations, just 8, and one of those demos was like 30 minutes long or something, which is atrocious for a high-demand convention demo. But whatever, it was like a 2-hour wait to play Starfox Zero. You could choose a training stage, the 30-minute stage in the city, or this kind of short, like 8-minute one in space that ended with a Pigma boss fight. I should have picked the 30-minute one, but I wanted to meet up with someone. I didn't want to be that prick that makes everyone else wait, so I went with the cool R-Wing bit in space. You kill a bunch of ships until the boss spawns. You fight the boss. It's a big dog fight. It's Starfox 64, which is what I wanted. It's exactly what I wanted. I couldn't get a straight answer from the Nintendo rep who was there about whether or not you could turn the gyro controls off, kind of like in Splatoon, so that hurt it a little bit. But the best part had nothing to do with the gameplay. They had 8 stations, right? 2 of them were these cool R-Wing cockpits. They did a lottery once you got near the front of the line, where you drew coins out of a bag, and if the coin had a number 1 or a number 2 on it, you got to fly in the R-Wing. And I got number 2, so I was super happy. I thought it would be like a D-box seat, but it just rumbled a little bit sometimes. It was still cool though, like I still got to sit in the R-Wing. So after that, I went upstairs to the, the Washington Interactive Network, this kind of like conglomerate of Seattle-based indie games, to meet up with Mel Fox, who's working on this cool-looking tower defense called Soul Locus. And we talked for a bit. She was super cool. I left from there to find Necropolis, again, Dark Souls-inspired 3D action RPG, procedurally generated. It's got a really similar control scheme, almost identical to the Souls games. I played that at East, enjoyed it, played it again here. Still a fantastic send-up to Dark Souls, still stands out, still stands on its own perfectly fine. Again, can't wait for that to come out. As if that wasn't good enough already, I found out that both Mirror's Edge and Cuphead were both at the Microsoft booth, so more long lines ahead. That's PAX though, PAX's lines. So the Mirror's Edge Catalyst line was obviously super long, who cares, it's Mirror's Edge. Got to play that finally. They're delivering. I was hesitant about it. I didn't know whether or not they would screw that up, but as far as I can tell, they nailed the formula again. It's kind of an open world now. It's kind of hub-based. As far as the gameplay goes, it's Mirror's Edge, with just an added coat of polish. You retain your momentum better now. There are smoother transitions from like one obstacle to the next. It's a lot more fluid now. I was told by one of the reps there that you will get gadgets, so I don't know if that means you'll get like a grappling hook or something, but I'm pretty excited about that. It played really well. Then the line for Cuphead was like right next to the Mirror's Edge booth, so I just went from the Mirror's Edge demo, got back in line for Cuphead. Oh my god, Cuphead is brilliant. Oh man, it's a big boss rush. And there is just, it oozes personality. It's this, if you haven't seen it before, I don't know how you've missed this. It's got this incredible Steamboat Mickey style, art style going for it. And it just plays like a dream. It's co-op. It's got a lot of really neat stuff going on. It's mostly like a bullet hell co-op game though. It's fun as hell. It's got one of the greatest art styles I have ever seen. I really cannot wait for Cuphead to come out. It's one of those games that I can tell you right now, it's probably, unless something disastrous happens, it's probably going to be on my shortlist for Game of the Year, whatever year it comes out in, which I think it's supposed to come out next year. So I ended the night going to something totally unrelated to PAX. I ended the night by going to the live Sawbones and My Brother and Me show. Those are 2 podcasts that I am a huge fan of. Sawbones is a show about medical history, and My Brother and Me is like a comedy improv advice show, and they both happen to be on their in Seattle as part of their Pacific Northwest tour. So it just happened to coincide with the PAX weekend perfectly. I got my tickets months ago. Really excited to go to one of these shows. So first off, they warmed up the show with Sawbones. They were talking about bird diseases and wound up being really funny, despite that sounding kind of grim. And then John Roderick of the Long Winters came out and they did the opening theme, which is It's a Departure, one of the Long Winters songs. They performed that live as the opening for the My Brother and Me show. Both shows were funny as hell, as per usual. They're already up on iTunes, the live shows they did in Seattle. If you want to check them out and give them a listen, I highly recommend it. They are funny as hell. So it was pretty late when I got back to my hotel, so I went to sleep. Sunday was actually kind of uneventful because it was like 80% lines, even more so than Friday and Saturday. I played a match of Dreadnought, which had been hyped up a lot. I was really excited for it, but it turned out kind of disappointing. Not bad, just disappointing. I was hoping it would be like one group of people all working to pilot one gigantic Dreadnought class ship. Kind of like how Guns of Icarus is, like one group of people all working together on one ship. But no, it's just a class-based multiplayer shooter with spaceships. So it's really slow, but that's kind of what you expect from a game like that. It's alright, I'm not head over heels for it. The longest line of the show was the Oculus line, which I went to next. I sat in that for about 4 hours. At this point, I'm so all in for a taste of VR that I was totally okay with that. I would wait 4 hours in line in the desert for 8 ounces of water. I would wait 4 hours in line for 8 minutes of VR. Plus, time flew because most of the socializing you do at PAX happens in the lines themselves. So you make really fast friends there and time just melts away. Plus, we would do things like we would save each other's spots in line so we could individually get out of line to if we needed like a bathroom break, or if we needed to go and stretch our legs walking around a little bit, or if we needed to go and grab a bite to eat or something, so that's nice. And while we were in line, I saw a bunch of people get their heads shaved across at the Square Enix booth. Every time someone got their head shaved, Square would donate $47 to a cancer charity. And a lot of people stepped up to the plate for that. And after they got their heads shaved, they would get Agent 47 barcode temporary tattoos, so that's neat too. They were also doing a bunch of presentations like right in front of the Oculus line about the new Hitman and the new Deus Ex. And at the end of one of those Deus Ex presentations, they gave out like these cool little mini Adam Jensen statuettes to the people watching from the Oculus line, so I may or may not give that away as a raffle prize during a future marathon. Look out for that. So finally, I got to the end of the line, and you get a choice of demos. One of them is some bullshit hockey game where you play as the goalie and you don't get to move around all that much. And the rep there even said, yeah, it's kind of shitty, I don't recommend it. There seemed to be like 5 or 6 choices. The only ones I really remember, though, were Eve Valkyrie, which I think is another ship-based combat game that got a lot of buzz back at PAX East, and Edge of Nowhere, which is kind of like a platformer / adventure / horror game. So, of course, that's the one I went for. Now, at the time, I didn't recognize the name. It sounded a little bit familiar. I knew it from somewhere, but I didn't put 2 and 2 together there. But as soon as I started it up, I saw the Insomniac logo, and I instantly knew what it was. So you might remember earlier this year, or maybe last year, Insomniac showed a trailer for a VR game set in the Arctic, and it teased a bunch of like Lovecraft-inspired monsters. That's the game I played. It's this Arctic setting inspired by At the Mountains of Madness, and it's all in third person, and guess what? VR works just as well in third person games. I was super surprised by that. The game was awesome. It was so rad. You look over your shoulder off into the distance, and you just see Cthulhu stomping overhead, totally unaware of your tiny insect-sized ass. And it's heart-pounding, man. And then you're being chased through like this dark, icy cavern by all these kind of like dog-sized bug enemies, and you're glancing over your shoulder to see if they're still following you. And you're running, and you're jumping, and you're like shimmying up ropes and stuff, and you occasionally get to look down at the drop below you, and it's vertigo inducing. It's such an incredible experience to be that immersed that you look down into this 100-foot drop, and you get that same stomach-churning feeling that you would get in real life if you looked straight down from that height. It was so cool. Every time I do something with VR, I become even more convinced that it is for real. That was most of my Sunday. I had a bit of time to kill before the show floor closed that day, so I hit up the Mad Max booth, and there were literally like 8 or 9 kids spread across 3 different groups. I'm talking like kids 10 to 12 all rocking Rooster Teeth merch. It was uncanny. No idea why so many kids were congregating in the Mad Max line. Anyway, what I played, it was okay. It was okay. There was a running Mad Max motif at PAX. Like, I rewatched Fury Road on the plane ride there. There was this cool Mad Max Uber there. There was a Mad Max-themed pub crawl that I talked about earlier. And then there was the Mad Max game, which came out September 1st. And the game was the worst Mad Max thing that I experienced while I was there. Not terrible, but just kind of bland. Arkham Asylum style combat, some fun vehicular stuff. Not a ton of personality though, felt a little bit lifeless. Didn't make a really good argument for picking up the game. So I went back to my hotel to see if there were any parties going on that night, and I found out that Dreadnought was hosting something in the hotel that I was staying at. But I couldn't get in despite being a con attendee, despite staying at that hotel, and despite having played their game earlier that day. Because the only people I found out that they gave wristbands to get into the party were people who stood in line to play Dreadnought a minimum of 3 times. That's like 5 or 6 hours in line to play their game 3 times just to attend a party. Fucking terrible. I was too exhausted to go back to the convention center to like take part in any tournaments or do anything else that night. Like, I could have gone to the concerts, but I wasn't really feeling it. I wound up turning in kind of early. I had a short Sunday. Finally, Monday rolls around, final day of PAX. I slept in a little bit, which almost bit me in the ass because I wanted to scope out a game called For Honor. And the line was long, obviously. I got there at 11:30. Here is the problem. There was a Scalebound Q&A and demo panel a block away in the Sheraton at 3:30, and I was intending to leave 45 minutes to an hour early to make sure I got there before the line could fill up. So we're talking, I wanted to be out of there around 2:30 to 2:45. That's when I would have wanted to leave for that. I was prepared to wait 3 hours in that line and walk away if need be to make sure I got into that panel. So I wait, and 2:20 is creeping around, and I'm thinking, fuck, I'm gonna have to leave the line after waiting nearly 3 hours for this. So it's a 4v4 game, right? And one of the groups at the front of the line was a group of 3 people, and I went there by myself. Mike didn't come along with me. So it was that group of 3 at the front of the line, and then me a couple groups back. I would have had to wait like another 40 to 60 minutes to get my turn. But that group of 3 came over to me and invited me to be their 4th, which thank God for that kind of generosity, because I got to play, didn't have to abandon ship on the line, still made time for the panel. So they give you about 10 minutes to practice, and then they throw you into like a 10-minute match, and the game is really, really fun. If you've ever played Chivalry or War of the Roses, it's kind of like that. I think I might even like it more than Chivalry, which is nuts. So you can walk or run. X on the DualShock 4 does a dodge roll or a sidestep depending on the situation. Double tapping square does a guard break animation. The left trigger locks onto a nearby enemy and raises your guard. The right button and the right trigger are light and heavy attacks, kind of like Souls. And finally, the right stick controls which direction you're guarding from. So left, right, or overhead. So if you hold the stick left and you hold the guard button down, the left trigger, you will block attacks coming at your left side. And when you swing the sword, you swing in the same direction that you're guarding from. So you can swing left, right, or overhead. Plus you can guard break, you can dodge like I said. And if you time a heavy attack correctly, you can also do a parry, but that seemed really tough to do. It is really simple. It's more simple than I'm making it out to be. It's kind of like a less luck-based rock, paper, scissors game where you have to watch where your opponent is attacking from. You have to block and counter and guard break and all this stuff. It's so fun. It's really, really fun. You have to attack them from angles that they're not already guarding from. I really enjoyed it a lot. It's got a good combat system. And the game type that we played was this kind of domination slash zone control kind of thing. So you have 3 points. You have A, B, and C. And capturing them awards your team with points. I think they were all worth 150 each, but those points are temporary. So you get 150 when you cap one of them, but then if you lose that point, you lose the 150 points that you gained for capping it in the first place. So when you have a point capped, you also get like 1 point per second or something like that for each point. And you also get points for killing enemies and enemy soldiers. At A, there's like this MOBA style constant spawn of weak enemy AI controlled soldiers, and they make the battles feel gigantic instead of just like these small intimate 4-on-4 fights. So the goal is to make it to 1,000 points. When your team gets to 1,000 points, the match is not over, but the enemy team loses morale, and when they lose morale, their players don't respawn anymore. So the way you win is you finish off all 4 of the enemy team players once you hit 1,000 points. It was a lot of fun. I like it a lot. I'm glad that I actually got to play it and I didn't have to abandon line to get to the Scalebound panel. So we finished our match around 2:45, I think. I sprinted from the show floor down to the stairs, sprinted down 4 flights of stairs, sprinted down the block to the Sheraton to make it to the Scalebound panel, managed to get really good seats, and they revealed a lot of information during that panel. And they showed a lot of new footage too, a gameplay. They showed an extended version of the Gamescom demo, so they start off with the stuff that you've seen before, and then they go inside the Great Tree. Kamiya was there, Inaba was there, JP Kellums was there, Major Nelson was hosting it, Drew's actor even came out, sorry I can't remember his name. So just a few little details about it. You can fly the dragon like an airship, and they said that its top speed right now is around 200 kilometers an hour. They teased these multiplayer team-up combo attacks for the co-op mode. They're working with the guys who did the Metal Gear Rising soundtrack for Scalebound's soundtrack, and something I thought was super cool was that you can rely on the dragon to kill enemies for you, and you can kind of just sit back and be his support, but if you do that, the game doesn't reward you with red orbs, which are the game's currency, because the dragon will burn up all the enemies' corpses and the red orbs along with them. So you can't just be passive if you expect to be rewarded. You've got to land the killing blows. They also showed off this, like, Pimp My Dragon in the form of how customizable the dragons are, like skins, body parts, scales, armor, all sorts of, like, ridiculous accoutrements. This game is looking really, really good, like Platinum with a proper huge budget. Cannot wait for this. I even got to, they did a meet and greet afterwards, so I got to meet Kamiya. I got a Scalebound poster that he and the rest of the guys there autographed. It was good. It was sublime. Finally, I ended things with the final thing of the weekend, the weekend-long tournament, the Omegathon. They always keep the final game that the players are going to play a mystery. I called that it was going to be Mario Maker, and it turned out to be a Mario Maker level with a Seattle and PAX theme to it that Nintendo specifically designed for the Omegathon. If you watch the Nintendo World Championships, it was on par with those levels in terms of just being really brutal. Very entertaining to watch. The crowd got into it as usual. Like, they played Pac-Man last year and it was really hype, so that's awesome. After the Omegathon ended, I got my bags, I called a shuttle, went back and waited at the airport for my 10 p.m. red-eye, and my sleep has been messed up ever since then because I have no ability whatsoever to sleep on a plane, so I did not get a wink of shut-eye during that 6-hour flight home. So it messed my sleep schedule up. Plus, I got sick at some point. This was my second year at PAX Prime, and once again, I had a blast. Seattle is a beautiful city that I really admire. The convention always provides so much to do and so much to play. You make so many fast friends there. I love going to PAX. I'll be at PAX East again in 2016 in Boston. I'll be at Prime again next year, no doubt. And I've rambled on long enough. Thank you for indulging that. Thanks for watching, everyone. Take it easy. Have a good one.